What is up, fam? Hello, everybody, on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. I guess depending where you're at, but it's beautiful here. Anyway, a lot of the fam had trouble with Vimeo or being able to watch this interview that I did Friday night with Jason Solis on immigration, so I'm going to get right into it and let you guys enjoy this kick-ass interview that Jason and I got to do, and I had the privilege of interviewing. So you guys enjoy. What is up, fam? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very, very special edition of Pandemonium. Tonight is my first and Pandemonium's first night broadcasting on the Vimeo network. That's not exactly why it's special. It's special because I have my first Pandas Patriots on. I have the one and only Jason Solis, otherwise known as at Rio Grande Texan, excuse me, on Twitter. I never did. How is everybody? Right. How are you tonight, Jason? All right. Now that I've unmuted you, people will now hear you. How are you tonight, Jason?
I'm doing great, brother. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be on the show, and I look forward to having a great talk about immigration and wanting to say hi to everybody back in the Rio Grande Valley and all of my peeps. So it'll be good.
Awesome, exactly, and that's the exact reason why I wanted to have you on. For folks that don't know, I was fortunate enough to meet Jason and his father in the San Antonio MAGA meetup that was held. And that event was so inspiring for Jason that he actually decided to start to do his own meetup, and that's going to be September 15th in Texas. Before the end of the show, we'll get back to that. But I wanted to basically introduce Jason. Jason Solis is, I got it right, you're 34 years old.
I am.
Looking good. Businessman.
All right.
There you go. Businessman, entrepreneur, and you just happen to live and raised your entire life, born in McAllen, Texas, which is 8 miles from the border, and also happens to be where our First Lady was yesterday, checking out immigration facilities and basically showing her support. Very classy lady. It was pretty nice. Did you get a chance to see any of the festivities that she brought to McAllen yesterday?
Well, nothing other than what was shown on television. I mean, it was totally unannounced. So that's the first thing. That was kept very, very, very quiet. And other than that, we were just going through a big deluge of rain, and there was a whole lot pouring down. So we were more focused on making sure that everybody was safe, and I hope everybody's safe back home.
Absolutely. So basically, we're a lot of folks, us regular folks, we are touched by immigration here and there in our lives. But with you living and being raised 8 miles from the border, I'd say that immigration has been a extremely large part of your life, illegal and legal. And that's kind of where I want to start. If you don't mind, if you could tell us a little bit about how your family got to McAllen, Texas, and basically a little bit about yourself, your dad, and we'll go from there.
All right. So everybody always gets surprised whenever my father and myself go around and we start having those MAGA hats on, or we wear a Trump 2020 shirt. And the first thing that people have to understand is I'm in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, that's ground zero. That is the ultimate spot for immigration. It's the nation's hottest spot. There is no worse area for illegal immigration, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and any sort of illicit activity than that border. So
that's why you referred to it as ground zero. Basically, that is
yeah,
where the most traffic is going through. Probably the largest presence of border agents. Is that also correct?
Well, for sure, it's got a huge presence of our border patrol agents and our customs guys and all of our ICE agents and the people that we love in law enforcement and that we respect and that we salute. However, we definitely need more because there's just been a huge increase, and it goes in cycles. Sometimes you'll have a maybe a slower period, and it's definitely seasonal. And depending on who's in office, that will also determine greatly on the amount of risk these coyotes or the coyotes will take to start smuggling.
Absolutely. So basically, you were born in McAllen, right?
Right. So I was actually born in Mission, Texas, which is like Mission and McAllen are super close to each other. I mean, they're maybe 2 minutes in some areas. It's really close. So it's funny. Going back to your question about how did we even get so involved, and who am I, and I guess who are the Solises, and why are we MAGA to our core? And one of the most important things to realize is we come from a family of legal immigrants. And you will never see a more impassioned or more bold stance taken against illegal immigration than that of a family that's done it right through the legal process. Because we have a very, very, very high understanding of the amount of sacrifice and the amount of, I guess, love that we have for this country and how much we've given to it and how much we've embraced it. And I guess also coming to terms with some realities and some truth that many illegal immigrants and some legal immigrants also have a hard time with. So, it's interesting. But my father, was born in Mexico,
Okay.
and quite frankly, he got, his mom and him and all, along with his siblings, were able to find an opportunity and saw an opportunity to live a better life. And they came from a family in Mexico of prestige, of wealth, and they came from an opportunity to see how that would work out. Unfortunately, when my grandmother became, I guess, religious, being LDS, uh, she was cut off from all of that. And so she lost all of those opportunities of wealth and prestige. And she was starting to see that maybe Mexico wasn't going to be able to be something viable. And in order for her to give an opportunity to my father and to her other children of that success, of that opportunity, of that American dream, she decided to take the family over to California. And so I have a big place in my heart for California because that's where a lot of our family are from. We still have family that live in California, and so if they're watching, I love you. But we're definitely going to have some different takes on immigration and some different ideas about how that should be implemented.
Right.
And we're definitely going to do that. So when my father came to the United States, they went through the whole process, and they were meeting with their ICE agents and all the customs people, and they were going through the whole process, done well, and they were able to obtain that status and becoming a United States citizen. And
How old was your father when he came?
oh man, he was a toddler
Oh, okay.
when when they came, and so he was maybe elementary school age, very young though, extremely
Okay.
young, not even past second grade.
Oh, 10-4.
When they were able to get full on citizenship after going through years of doing it properly and doing it legally
Right.
and getting those documents squared away. So that's that on my father's side. On my mother's side, we have a whole different side, which is our Japanese side. And
Oh,
my mother was actually born in Japan. She was born on the United States Air Force base because my grandfather served in the United States Air Force, and he ended up marrying my grandmother, in Japan, and they met there during the Korean War. So again, you're going to see a lot of this type of patriotic theme throughout the Solis story and throughout the immigration, debate, because when you take a look at the Solis family, at the Rivera family, which is on my mother's side, we bleed red, white, and blue. We ooze MAGA because we understand what it is to see people sacrifice, and we have family that are overseas. Many, many military members that have retired, putting in their 20 plus years. In fact, we just had one of our family members, Carlos. He ended up retiring from the Air Force. I mean, he served well over 20. He was really high up there, almost I think mid 20s, almost maybe even uh, 28 to 30 years. I can't be quoted on that, but he's been serving well over 20. And so we have this idea of patriotism, and we have this idea of love for country. And so when my mom came over, she came over, of course, illegally, being a U.S. citizen born on a United States Air Force base. and being able to come to Mission, Texas, and that's how we got to Mission. That's how the family started there, and my father and mother met through some missionary service on my dad's part, where when my dad grew up in California. Again, he grew up his whole life pretty much in California,
10-4.
and started in L.A., went over to San Diego, La Jolla Beach, beach boy, surfer type guy. He was having a good time, and he decided to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints and do a 2-year mission. And when he did that, he was able to, I guess, see my mom. And after his mission, they started writing and calling, and he courted her, and they ended up getting married, and they moved to Texas. So
Excellent. Back when people were courted.
yes, sir, absolutely.
I do. I remember that. Chivalry is definitely not dead in the ones that watched it transpire with their parents. It's kind of ingrained in us because we watched. That's how it was done back then. You had those nervous
Right.
conversations with your hopefully your girlfriend's fathers and whatnot. But I digress. Getting back, so basically, it started with your grandmother having that American dream, looking at what America has to offer. I mean, forever it's been immigrants have come to this country to seek out a better life, but to become Americans. Am I getting that right? That was what they wanted to be, your grandmother, and she wanted her children to be Americans.
Oh, 110%. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And what's interesting is well, if I take it even a generation back on my mom's side, how my grandfather got involved in the Air Force or in the military. I mean, we need to go back to my great grandfather, who came from Mexico as well, and he had 16 children. I mean, imagine that number. I mean, that's a pretty big number.
16?
16. I mean, no Vimeo, no television, no Facebook, no Twitter. Entertainment was found elsewhere. And
Right.
right, and so 16 kids, you got to have help for work and things, and they came from a family that wasn't what I would call wealthy or well-to-do at all. They were very much an extremely hardworking family. But my grandfather, who's now deceased, would tell me stories of how his father spoke perfect English, and he made his kids speak English. And he, all of our family were bilingual, and he said, "Look, I want you to be able to answer these questions in English, and you have to be able to speak the language, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it right." So there was such an idea of immigration, but more important than immigration was the idea of genuine assimilation into America. You are American,
Right.
and we don't see that today. We see massive amounts of immigration that go unchecked, and then afterwards we never even get to question about the idea of, are these people being well assimilated? And the few studies that have come out are showing absolutely not. They're not
Right.
well assimilated. They're having very difficult time adjusting to language, culture, and then that. So out of those 16 children, 8 were boys and 8 were girls. And out of the 8 boys, all of them served in the military, except the youngest. And so he actually received a presidential decree stating that he did not have to go to Vietnam after all of these 7 other sons served. So in our family, we have such a proud history of the Rivera boys, and in the local museum in Mission, Texas, there are the portraits of my family that served. It's called Seven Sons Served, and it's in the newspapers. It was a big deal, and for the youngest to be given that leniency that my great grandmother requested was a blessing to her, because she already had a son in Vietnam. My tío Noé, or my uncle Noe, he served one tour. He came back for his father's burial, and then he actually re-enlisted and volunteered for a second tour as a United States Marine, as a leatherneck devil dog in Vietnam, because that's just who we are. So I
Right.
always come from that right perspective, and people just wonder, like, dude, what is this energy that you bring? Why are you so MAGA, or why are you so America first? Well, I'll tell you what, when you have a family that has over 15 to 20 of its members serve in the military, with a great portion of them retiring, there is a love for country. My parents raised me to love my country, to respect the flag, you salute, since I was a little boy. And so
Right.
that only has increased over the years, and seeing this president and other presidents in the past show that I've come to admire and love this country 110%.
Right. So definitely your uncles and your family members have led the way and shown that not only did you guys want to, your family come here to assimilate, and not only did they become Americans, they fought for the American ideals. And I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm anybody who watches Pandemonium shows know that my soft spot, my thing is the vets. That freedom is not free, that our vets have been throughout history have been mistreated too much, and I make it a personal mission myself to thank vets, and I hope everyone else does that. But I just got to say, I appreciate your family service to this country, because watching the people in my life that had the greatest impacts were my uncles and my dad and my grandparents that served, and that's why I have that strong patriotism. But it's starting to make sense. When we met in San Antonio, you and your father exuded MAGA. I don't know how you can describe it any other way. It was, you guys exuded it, and your patriotic spirit was palpable. And so now I understand just a little bit more about where you're coming from through that. So like I said, once again, I appreciate your family service to this country. Freedom's
Thank
not
you, sir.
free, and that's amazing. So basically, your dad meets your mom. They have this cute little kid in Mission, Texas, and you grow up in McAllen, Texas. Tell me a little bit about growing up 8 miles from the border. What that was like in the '80s and '90s.
Sure. So, my parents lived, for a bit of time in California, just a small amount, and then from there they came back over here to Mission, Texas, and I was born over here in Mission. And then what I ended up seeing more than anything, first it's my oldest brother. He's the oldest out of the three, and he's very similar. And then you have my sister, and then you have myself, and all of us are definitely MAGA. There's no doubt in that. People that talk to us, they get the picture real quick. So it's fun. Now, growing up, I think in more than anything, you definitely saw more fear and respect for immigration and for law enforcement, generally speaking. Just recently, we've seen a wave of this culture, where F the police is kind of, it went from a song to an attitude to now we're living it. Not
Right.
just a little, a tiny little cool thing that you heard, from the MWA or something, and it's turned into something really, really, really palpable. And it went from something that before, when I was growing up, I mean, you saw a police officer, you would, say hi to them, and they would help you. And there's always been this, I think, love for the law enforcement and for the community. And I'll tell you, growing up in Mission, Texas, uh, since that's ground zero, everybody would always make jokes. Like if you wanted to see somebody run fast, you would joke with them, especially amongst the Latinos. Oh my gosh, dude, immigration's coming for you. Oh, watch out for the guy in green. And you'd see people sprint, just and that was a joke. I mean, it was a joke. It wasn't meant to be offensive, but in Spanish, it's like, oh my gosh, migra, and it was like, oh no, pues córrele, way, you take off, dude, and you take off and you run. And people that are watching this that speak Spanish or that understand a lot of the Latino culture, you're probably laughing right now, doing, oh man, that is so true. It was such a joke that we would go ahead and talk about immigration busting us or laughing. And you know it was kind of one of those things. So it was a definitely something where it was a joke, but you knew that it could happen. You probably seen it happen. And
Right.
the idea of driving around in my hometown in Mission, the quickest way you would spot somebody um, that wasn't from Texas was you would see their license plate, right? And it would always say, Tamaulipas, Mexico, or Reynosa, Tamaulipas, and it was these Reynosa tamps, license plates that are yellow and gold, and they would have these weird numbers or letters on them, and we'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like somebody from Mexico, like wow, look at that.
Right.
You'd see like one car in the whole parking lot, and you'd be like, whoa, that guy's from Mexico, and it was this really cool thing where you could spot it. Now, if you go in my hometown and you get there during the holidays, or you get there at any given time right now, that parking lot will be full of nothing but license plates from across, the border. And then if you go during a seasonal time where they come to do a lot of Christmas shopping and visit maybe some of their family or people here, you start to see the entire parking lot. I mean, it's and then everybody speaking to you in Spanish first. And we're talking about growing up in the 80s and 90s. Well, when I was in elementary school, Spanish wasn't allowed. I remember being in kindergarten, and we had a legal immigrant, come, and he's actually one of my good friends that I grew up with in elementary, junior high, and high school. And he had very limited English when he came, and you can tell that there was this attitude of I need to improve myself. I need to learn that language. I know I have a thick accent, but I'm trying. There was no catering of, oh, here's your homework in Spanish. Where I come from, Smooch, they
Right.
have entire facilities and entire programs where they are giving all the textbooks and all the homework in Spanish, and they're really making it to where the idea of speaking English is almost looked down on. It's like, oh, you're from Mexico? Well, speak your language. And that's because we're in the US. I mean, we're in Texas. I mean,
Right. In
so
being like so close to the border in that town of Mission and McAllen, was it predominantly a immigrant community of immigrants that have came here the right way? Was it a mixed community of Caucasians and Latinos? What was the basic makeup of McAllen when you were growing up
well, the
in
great majority
Mission?
is always going to be Latino. I mean, there's
Right.
just no doubt about that.
Right.
And you would definitely see a lot of the those that are here, or that you see a lot of the road names after, Sherry Road or Bryan. A lot of those were some of the founding or more of the prominent figures in our citrus and in our education industry. And you got to see, for example, like in Mission, you have Tom Landry coming from Mission, Texas. I mean, the great Dallas Cowboy
Oh yes.
coach and just that legend, right? And so anything that was Caucasian or otherwise was definitely the minority. I mean,
Right.
that's the minority where I'm from. And so whenever we would have these people, though, funny enough, growing up, it was never, I guess, an idea of, oh my gosh, you're white.
Right.
It was, oh no, that's just so and so. It wasn't this weird thing. Again, now I'm just talking about when I'm, my experience
Right.
and what I saw my family do. I mean, we were going to church all the time with people, that were white, or we were getting together for holidays, and I don't know. I never really experienced, I guess, this odd, oh my gosh, Mexican and white, and
Right.
it
It was all
it just
everyone
didn't
was
happen.
assimilating. Is that what I'm getting? That the culture of the community was basically assimilating and being Americans that live on the southern part of the United States.
For sure,
Okay.
even though that, I'm not going to sit here and act like that for a lot of it. I mean, there's definitely still a strong essence, more now I think than before. But when I was growing up, there was still an effort. There was an effort to assimilate to the country. There was an effort to speak English. I was able to go to, like I said, any shopping center and speak English. In fact, I really didn't speak Spanish till I was about 18 or 19.
Right.
To be 100% truthful, I was not fluent in Spanish up until way later. In fact, you can still find a lot of my friends that still don't speak very good Spanish. I mean, they can get along maybe with their grandma, or order a taco, or
Right.
go to a restaurant and order some food or something, or carry a small conversation. But I don't know, if Univision went up to them and said, "I want to do an interview," I don't think they'd be able to handle an interview. Not all of
Right. So, staying with your youth, was there a border fence or any kind of anything put up? I know that basically around the '90s is when George W. Bush came in, there was some sections of fence and whatnot put in. How did that affect McAllen, Texas, and what does that look like? Because you
them.
said it's ground zero, so it's obviously a busy area. How did that affect you as a kid? What do you remember?
Well, I definitely remember, when the border wall, uh, that was the actual term that was being used, or border fence as well, during the Bush era. That was very unpopular. I mean, I live in one of the most blue areas in Texas. I mean, there were bumper stickers everywhere. No fence, no wall, and they'd have the, like the razor wire kind of wrapping around, like the letters, and
Right.
it was this really just it was horrible. If you believed in a barrier, you're an automatic traitor to your race. And it's funny, but I tell people all the time, if you were to ask me, how many times I've experienced any form of racism or racial bigotry or language that would be considered inflammatory. It's always from my own race. I don't think maybe once or twice in my life, perhaps somebody that has not been Latino given any sort of racial, I guess, attitude. But from my own people where I live, it is considered controversial to support the president. It is considered odd. It is considered, I'll tell you a term, like they'll call people coconuts. You're brown on the outside, but you're white on the inside.
I
Um,
have not heard that one,
ah,
so
yeah,
I
you've heard that,
appreciate that.
you know,
Coconuts,
uh,
okay.
a coconut, and we've heard all sorts of very strong language, and that's just like the nicest terms. I mean, as soon as we start speaking Spanish, it's brutal. It's this
Right.
horrible idea of how could you be in support of sovereignty, of a barrier to define a border, and don't you ever go against the family, because I know it sounds controversial, but quite frankly, when you got people like Amy, like for example Amy Chua, she's the tenured Yale professor who wrote Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. She also wrote the Triple Package, and recently her latest book, it was on political tribes and just tribalism in general, and people that are well read, and that are educated, that have performed studies on tribalism and things of that nature, you end up finding out that people can be brutal and very, very, very. No matter what, this is how I vote. This is how I was born. This is how I think. And no matter what facts you come with, no matter what, I will always be a Democrat. I will always be against, border enforcement, and that's because many of our own law enforcement agents, in fact, the great majority again, that are guarding that border right now, are family members of theirs, cousins of theirs, brothers, sisters. They are our brethren and our sisters and our families that protect our way of life as Americans. And as soon as you bring that up, people just have a very hard time with it.
Right. So yeah, back when you were younger, I'm assuming that Border Patrol, you said you were scared, but you also had that respect for what they were doing and what they were trying to accomplish. Has that changed majorly? Because you're in a blue area. Has that changed? Have you seen a palpable shift towards people not hating ICE now, or not helping Border Patrol, or just disrespecting them as a whole? I mean, we're starting to see it on Twitter and Facebook with the doxing of ICE agents and some pretty
Right.
nefarious things, like you said, especially with law enforcement. Have you seen the shift in the way, I guess the people in the town and have treated the Border Patrol and the people that are there, even though they're their cousins, they're their family, they're people they know?
It's true. You said something. Growing up, the Solis never feared um, law enforcement. We were always taught to respect them and love them just because of our background. A lot of the people that were fearful were those that were participating in illegal activity. So they were more fearful. It was more fear based. Now it's definitely, I'm here, and what the heck are you going to do about it? Uh, I have rights. Human beings are not illegal. They start spouting out slogans, and
Liberal
it's
talking points.
oh, bro, believe me, we're gonna get into it, right? And
Yeah.
it turns into this constant narrative of, what, I have a right to be here. Borders are defined by man, and I don't have to follow that. God's green earth is one big earth, and therefore, because you're a Christian or because you believe a certain way, or even if you're not a Christian, or just a person that believes, what, there are no boundaries, and so because of that, I'm gonna live this virtue signal, higher moral law, apparently, and if you try to enforce your country's law, then it's not viewed very well. Today, we've had a huge shift in attitude, both ways, though. Our law enforcement agents on the border, correctly, the way that you stated, I have several personal friends that I'm not going to mention by name. I have family that I'm not going to mention by name, and I have very well connected agents that actually see the data. They process these illegal aliens that come. They they get to see the worst of the worst that the news cannot see, and that quite frankly many Americans are not privy to. Because I think if they were privy to the information that I've been told and that I've seen by these border patrol agents, they would literally be panic. I mean,
Right.
quite literally, there would be a level of panic. People get panicky over a sale on Black Friday. People drive or behave in a way that they normally wouldn't when there's a greater level of excitement or adrenaline. And when people see, I guess, what I've seen and or understand the real truth behind illegal immigration, they can't handle it. In fact, they can't even handle what they see in fact, and then therefore they go back to emotions. And that's what we always see with illegal immigration. It's super emotional, very little fact based, and as soon as the facts come out, it's going to go back to emotion. They hate to talk about facts. It's always an image,
Right.
like that little girl, right? That Time magazine thing.
Exactly. Exactly. And that was a total lie and a farce. And the girl was never separated from her mom. But facts get in the way of the
Oh, for
liberal
sure,
agenda a lot.
for
And
sure.
I definitely want to get into a little bit about some of the information you are privy to, stuff that you can get into. I want to do that in just a few. I want
Sure.
to basically ask, about what you've seen, the big change you've seen, because you're 8 miles from the border. So I'm assuming that growing up and even beyond, you've had illegal immigrants jumping perhaps fences on your yard. I'm sure you've got some pretty good stories to tell about some of the things that you have seen transpire. So if you want to tell me a funny story, or tell us a funny story, or not a funny story, but something that maybe impacted you, and then basically tell me what you've seen as far as the big change, because we've done immigration shows, and yesterday Adam and Glenn did a fantastic immigration
Oh,
show, and
absolutely. Hers
Adam
was
was,
really good.
the process. Adam nails the process. He understands political ramifications. He understands all this. You're there. You live this. What's the human side of it? I know that's a lot to ask all at once, but tell me a little bit about how this has touched your life and how it's changed from when you were younger to what you're seeing now.
Okay, so that is a bit of a mouthful to swallow there. So let me
It
go ahead and
is.
start off
Take your
with
time.
thank you, bud. One of the things that we've seen definitely is that big change in attitude. And I think one of the stories that would be interesting is I was speaking to a friend of mine who lives up north, kind of like your whereabouts, and he was trying to not virtue signal, but he was definitely trying to lecture about Jason, what do you know about immigration? What the heck could you know that I did not learn from CNN or MSNBC or Rachel Maddow or the latest greatest View show with Joy Behar or something.
Right.
So I told him, I said, do you send your child to a school? He says, oh, yeah, absolutely. I said, okay. Has your school ever shut down? He went, yeah, there was like a plumbing problem once, or there was an issue. And I said, okay, have you ever had a school shut down because somebody went in there that was an illegal alien and that used your school, your child's school, as shelter so that they can run away from Border Patrol? And he went, no. I said, have you even ever spoken to a Border Patrol agent? Have you ever spoken to somebody that's actually guarded that border? And he said, well, no. I said, why not? And he had a culture that was kind of not imposed, but that I think he had been manipulated into believing that these guys were bad guys. That they're not good guys. That they're there to hurt people that are innocent crossing that border. And I said, and I said, well, until you've had an elementary school shut down, and not just once, but several times, or the fact that a group of illegal aliens know that there's tons of space and tons of rooms and go into classrooms and go into these public schools, and you have to call in the police and you have to get a report that's being tried, I guess that's trying to be kept secret from the news about your child's school being invaded by illegal aliens trying to avoid arrest at that border. You don't know squat about illegal immigration. You don't know what it's like to see children that are learning on their little playground area and have a bunch of illegal immigrants cross right in front of them. trying to get to the other side of this border and already there. You don't know what it's like to practice a softball game or to practice football or have a football practice, right? And see smugglers with backpacks of marijuana packed, I mean, stacked on their back, huge packs, and do it in open broad daylight. I mean, you don't know that. Drug dealing to a lot of the people is this boogeyman that's in a dark alley. Hey kid, come here. Hey guy, buy this. No, no,
Right.
no,
Going through
no,
a
no.
tunnel at night where nobody sees it. You're saying that
Yeah,
you see
no.
this during your day-to-day life, guys with obviously large backpacks carrying illegal drugs.
Oh, totally. And it's become where first it was very much feared. It was kept trying to be kept in a way that was discreet, obviously because of the illegal activity. Then as the years have gone by, you start to see a shift when every single president and every single Congress and every single round or new generation of senators, some of them have been there for generations, really, have not delivered on promises that were really extravagantly pronounced upon their little political pulpits. And then afterwards, people like President Trump and presidents, I guess, with his nature and with his will and with his sheer power to actually enforce the law. Imagine that concept. It is a huge paradigm shift right now in my area.
Okay, so did you basically they were getting more brazen because no one was necessarily going after them back in the day, and you're starting to
Oh,
see a shift now on that end?
Oh, 110. I mean, I'll tell you right now, an illegal alien family has no shame to look for work, like zero. Before it was like, oh my gosh, they would only do jobs that perhaps would be well below the wage.
Right.
For example, if it was somebody that was like a caretaker, or somebody that was in charge of maintaining your home clean, a live-in maid or something of that nature, you knew you can back, when I was growing up, get away with hiring them and pay them a very, very, very well below a minimum wage and a subpar standard because they were getting a way better deal already just being in this country and having those benefits. And that was kind of part of the package. Like, you're not going to get paid as much as that American citizen, but you live in the country, you have an opportunity, you can have a couple meals, take care of the kids, clean the house, it's air conditioned. You've got it pretty good, and they were grateful. Now it's totally the opposite. Right now, in my area, there are entire communities, and I mean communities, of housing that are filled with 90 to 98% illegal aliens, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. In fact, it's promoted for that reason. The people that live there, almost all of them are illegal. They're all receiving that beautiful house because it's not government housing. This is the Section 8. I mean, we're talking nice. I mean, gated subdivisions. We're talking swimming pools. We're talking really nice apartment complexes that have landscaping and all these beautiful, nice things. And they're getting it for, I don't know, $10, $50 a month. They are, on top of that, they're receiving an extraordinary amount of benefits because they are undocumented and everybody knows, but it's okay because that's the culture. Can you imagine going, and it's still happening that way right now, but what I'm trying to, I guess, let you know is now it's becoming really, really, really sore and really, really raw topic because you have a president calling you out. And then you have
Right.
people in the area saying, you know what, you're illegal. Maybe we should be giving those benefits to our veterans that have served this country. Maybe there's a bunch of legal citizens that are so poor that maybe they could use that $50 rent a month in that nice little gated subdivision. But we're going to be giving it to people who don't speak English, who don't care to learn, who
Right.
don't care to practice, who don't care to respect this country. They fly the Mexican flag everywhere and they don't give a dang. And it's done with this attitude of, and what are you going to do? What the heck are you going to do about it? You know?
And basically,
Uh-uh.
because it's such a blue area, that kind of explains why that's allowed. Not only allowed, it almost seems like they're trying to spur it to flourish. How is that affecting the job market for the immigrants that are there? the black community and whatnot. I mean, have you seen a shrinkage of the job markets because there are so many illegals in the area that are willing to work the job, take any job, but especially the good ones nowadays. It used to be you couldn't get a really good job as an immigrant. I mean, as soon as the government found out that you were employing an illegal, you were in trouble. You were,
Right.
taken to task. So how's that affecting the job market in Mission and in McAllen?
Well, now you've seen a big shift. I mean, we keep on talking about the way things were and the way things are becoming and how we hope for them to continue to become. Governor Abbott just was able to get his law that was very controversial passed through. Um, and we have the president who's setting the tone and the agenda of law enforcement, um, and not picking and choosing which laws based on the empathy or the emotion of the topic.
Right.
And so right now we're starting to see a much better market for legal work. We're starting to see a lot of people off of food stamps. I mean, right now, I mean, we have some of the lowest food stamp usage ever. I mean, big numbers. I mean, one of them was almost in 8 years, and there was a previous number that the food stamps were almost like at a 15-year, I think, at one point within this presidency low. But it's become such a low usage because we have that increased employment of U.S. citizens. For example, in our company, we were as the job market tightens, the wages are expected to rise. We want to see an increase in wage, and because the job market is tightening, and because of the skills gap is starting to get, I think, a little bit more useful with Ivanka Trump trying to promote technical trade skills and
Right.
vocational schooling, and I think that's a big deal. Now we see more and more people saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm not worth minimum wage. Um, I'm a United States citizen. I am skilled. What can you pay me?" So as a company, my father and I made a decision based on the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to give all of our employees a raise. And so we are definitely one of the small businesses that said, "Hey, you know what? We want to give all of our employees a raise. Thank you so much." And at the same time, we increased all of their vacation to to at least a week paid vacation. And this is in a landscaping and general construction industry that in our area is unheard of. I mean, you do not see landscapers getting what they get unless you work for my father, my father's company and my company. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at all. So we've been very blessed, and we wanted to let, I guess, people know that this is a real thing. It does affect wages. It does affect jobs, and we hire all American. We want all of our workers speaking English, and all of the property managers actually look at it and go, "You know what, Jason? AIM services and having your company out there just makes a huge difference because I can actually speak to your guys." A lot of these property managers, again, they don't speak Spanish, believe it or not. They don't. It's very limited, and so we have a lot of our property managers just go, "Hey, I mean, I really appreciate it. They speak English. They're a good team. We can communicate better. There's better morale." And you'll see a lot of the morale amongst people go up if they're obviously that, kind of going back to the shift in attitude. The American citizen and the American worker, their morale is sky high.
Right.
The legal worker is starting to get a little panicky, going, "Hey, man, between Greg Abbott's law and between the president's leadership, and now we're enforcing these laws." And there's a renewed sense of, "Hey, I'm proud to be in law enforcement. I will enforce the law." And my hands were tied for the past, 8 years, 16 years. Not anymore. This is the way it's actually always been. This is the way it's going to be, because that's just, the laws that the Congress and the Senate have passed.
Yeah, it seems to me that you're actually promoting the American dream again, whereas a lot of
For sure.
employers could not promote it because wages were stagnant for so long. But you've actually shown through the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that it helped you guys, and so when it helped you, you helped them. We all know that you take care of your employees will take care of you. Let me ask you this:
For
has
sure.
there been any pushback from the other side since you guys have taken a stand? You're hiring American only. And I'm just saying at the water cooler, at the church, or anywhere else. Is there any pushback from the community because you guys are, 100% going MAGA and going, proving the American dream is attainable?
Well, it's interesting, but I would say it's far more positive than negative.
Right.
Is there a little negative? Oh, definitely. I mean, again, I'm in a pool with piranhas. It's like asking if you're going to get bit. For sure,
Fair
I'm going to
enough.
get bit. It's just now we're cleaning out the pool, so to speak. There and the positive aspects of this have just become, far more, I guess, better and entrenched. And I mean, things are just looking really good.
Yeah, 3 years ago, if I asked you that question, what would the response be?
Oh, no way, no way. If you asked me that 3 years ago, yeah, no,
A
that
different
that would
world?
not be a positive response. A whole different answer would be given right now.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it, it it makes me feel good to see that the president's agenda that he's working so hard for, where you can see it actually work down 8 miles from the border with a small company that is hiring American, is showing people the American dream. It's an example. You're setting an example, and that makes me feel fantastic to know that the little places that we don't see these things, all we ever get is the narrative from the mainstream media or the narrative from the other side, which is usually, there's usually truth in the middle of both of those things. So that's part of the
Well,
reason
it's
why I wanted you on, to get that real human side of it from what you see.
sure, and it's one of those things where I tell people, Smooch, all the time. I'm like, look, have you even read Mexico's constitution as it pertains to immigration? And they look at me and they're like, no, but have you? And I'm like, actually, yeah, in English and Spanish. And some of the pieces that are laid out, some of those articles, when you take a look at it in English, it's called the General Law on Population, and that's part of the United States of Mexico's constitution. And in Spanish, La General de Poblacion, that's that's kind of like la ley. That's the law, and that's a big piece when it comes to the constitution, how they handle immigration. And when you take a look at some of these articles, like for example, Article number 32 is very clear in this general law of the general population. It's just very simple. It's pretty much a Mexico first article, saying that the national progress cannot ever be interfered with. And I have a lot of my friends right now on Facebook, and hopefully some of them are watching, that they can actually take a look at this. And I did mention to the fam and to everybody, bring your pad and pen, because I'm gonna throw some brass knuckles bombs. So that's one of them. Number one, I really think Mexico first and has a huge advantage in immigration and financials and drug and human trafficking and the whole nine yards. And their own laws have made it to where they can manipulate, their I guess the rules. I mean, Article number 34. It's super clear that immigration officials have to find it necessary that when they take a look at people coming in, they have to have sufficient funds, or what they call in Spanish, sustancia, to sustain yourself and your dependents. If you do not have that, or if you cannot prove that, they can deny you immediately. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's Mexico. So if I don't have
Right.
enough money to provide for me or the sustenance for my dependents, then I can't go to your country. And they enforce that law. So in other words, Smooch, are they having a food stamp or WIC program?
Nope, not at all.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, if you can't feed yourself, buddy, you're going to go hungry,
Well,
and
which
that's just not fine.
I don't know if there's any country out there, maybe over in Europe now, with their refugee crisis, they're paying the price for giving the WICs and the food stamps and the stipends and whatnot. They're paying it in a big way. Let me ask
Sure.
you this: that's doing it the right way. What happens if you jump the fence and decide to go and hang out in Mexico for a while? What are you looking
I'll
at
tell you
there?
right now, it ain't gonna happen. All of my friends again that are watching this, that are Republican or Democrat or Independent, regardless of they know what Mexico looks like at night. We all used to go, guys. Let's not lie and act like we don't know. We were kids crossing borders with 50 cents to put in that little machine or that quarter, or we would park our car for a couple of bucks in the parking lot. We know the Calle del Taco. We know all of the good places to go. We know all the clubs by name. And what I can't stand is when my own friends and family try to act like as if Mexico is a safe haven. When we were there, we know that if you don't act right, and many of my friends know this, you would have to take at least a $20 bill. That's your insurance policy. Why the $20? Was it for food? No. Was it because you wanted to give a donation to the poor lady on the side of the road? No. It's because you knew you were going to get stopped by a police officer for following the law, and because you're an American citizen, you better have a couple of bucks to hand over so he can just let you go by. And
Right.
that's a truth bomb that I think people just need to wake up and remember. Like, knock it off with your little virtue signal. You know better. And if you don't have that $20, everybody knew what type of jails Mexico had. Everybody made the jokes about eating dog food because they'll give you dog food if you cannot get enough bailout. There are no restrooms. There is no toilet paper. They gave you their little prensa libre, their little newspaper locally that was already stepped on, and a bunch of urine or feces on the floor, and they'll tell you to wipe yourself with that. And that's Mexico. And that is the reality. And maybe it's not for the elitists, maybe it's not for the wealthy, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people that'll post pictures of when they're, in these little resorts. And, I mean, we're talking about the general population here. And that's the reality. And it's sad because, when you take a look at a lot of the laws, if we were to jump that fence, Mooch, just to answer you directly, there is an entire military, uh, not police officers. I mean, these are military. They'll just shoot you dead right there on the spot, and there's
Wow.
nothing you can do about
So
it.
re-entry isn't exactly a problem that they're having over there.
No, 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 no. Nobody's jumping over to Mexico. They're jumping over here, right?
Exactly.
And I tell people all the time, they say, "Oh, but Mexico's so great." In Mexico, they say, "Buddy, have you ever seen people jump the fence the other way? If it's
Right.
so awesome, how come people are jumping over here? Immigrants vote with their feet, and with all the arguments that can be given, you just have to remember that one basic argument. Show me where they're going. Show me where they're trying to settle, and I'll show you where they really want to be. But this argument that, well, Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador or Mexico, all these areas are just equally awesome. Well, no, they're not, because they're all coming here. This is the land of the free. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of equal opportunity. If you bust your butt, not equal outcome, but equal opportunity. So
Absolutely. And everybody strives for equal, but they always forget about the people that are sitting there that are spending 5, 8, 10 years in order to do this the right way, that are in a line right now. I mean, as a kid, nobody liked somebody coming in and butting in front of the line. That would make you
or
want to fight. I mean,
right,
even as an adult, when you go to the fair or something and some jerk jumps in front of you, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, dude, that's not fair. They always
yeah.
talk about their virtue signaling and have empathy and have feelings and use emotion, but they don't equate it to the other side, which
Oh,
is
oh,
crazy.
ever. I mean, because again, it goes back to emotion, Smooch. I mean, Article 37 again in their own constitution. This is Article 37. In their first paragraph, it states very clearly that foreigners, quote, can be banned if their presence upsets, and this is where I quote, the equilibrium of the national demographic, end quote. That means if anything happens,
Spelled
for
out.
example, like voting, where if I can upset the national demographic or the equilibrium of it, if it becomes detrimental to the national or economic interest, that's another direct quote. Or quote, when they do not behave like good citizens in their own country, that's another quote. When they are not found to be physically or mentally healthy. I just got to stop right there.
Wow.
I just gave five, five, that's five, cinco, really controversial things that if I were to advocate for that for our U.S. citizens,
Right. You're a
and for our
monster.
legal process, people would call me racist, bigot. I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm a traitor to my own country, to my own race. It's like, you know what? Mexico has these laws. They enforce these laws, and what's really scary is if you take a look, just that last one, when they are not found to be physically or mentally healthy, Mexico can actually kick you out if they think you're not physically healthy or if they think you're not mentally capable. The other one that was really controversial is upsetting the national, equilibrium. That means caravans
Right.
coming across. How come Mexico doesn't stop and take them in? How come they don't stop in Central America or in other countries? Why does Mexico let them through? Because their immigration laws, as President Trump has said, you know, pounding hammer and pulpit are extremely, extremely strict, and
Right.
they don't play with them. It's like, you know what, you can't stay here. This is a little cross point. You're going to move on to the U.S. because they're stupid enough to be manipulated, and they're stupid enough to say, okay, come on in. I know that we can't vet you. We know that it upsets the the national demographic. We know that it costs extraordinary amounts of money. We know that we're not giving these benefits to U.S. citizens already, but we're going to give them to you because, well, there was one crying child,
Yeah.
and it's like, I mean, forget the crying child of the veteran, right? The one who's actually fighting for the country. Forget about the crying child who's
Right.
away from their parents.
Well,
When they do that, it's crazy, man.
it is, and you have to. I'm glad you mentioned that because President Trump had the angel moms and dads together today and said that exact thing. These people have been separated, but it's a permanent separation from their family. We always see the images, well, here lately because this is the hill that they want to die on. But we see
Right.
that emotion and the crying children and the Obama's cages and this, that, and the other, but they don't show the other side of it. They don't show Kate Steinle's dad
No.
holding her on a pier when she says, "Help me, Dad." As a dad, that
Right.
hits me right in the gut. When your kid says help and you can't help, that's terrible. And there's the numbers that our president put out there today: 25,000 illegals that murdered American citizens.
For sure.
25,000.
For
That is
sure.
such a huge number that I'm all for let's have some empathy and let's show both sides of the story, but
Yeah.
we know that's not what we're seeing. Uh,
Oh no, of course not.
Getting into what what you're seeing, you have family, you have friends, you have people that have been in border patrol for a long time. So let's
Yeah.
just get down to brass tacks. What
Sure.
what is going on? Give the audience here an eye-opening account of what's really going on the border that you're hearing from the people that are risking their lives to secure our border daily. And you tell them that Smooch Panda appreciates them and they're in my prayers. But I digress again. Yeah, tell folks exactly what you're seeing, what you hear, and why this immigration, this whole thing is such a huge impact on your life and the future of our country from the people on the ground.
Sure thing. Well, let me go ahead and tell you, off, right now, every single one of them is, honored. All of the people that I know that we're talking about, the family, the friends, these guys, they're honored to be doing their job. They love it. They love this country. They are immigrants themselves, many of them. They understand what it is to have the value of the American flag held high in high esteem. They know what it is to sacrifice, and they know what it is to save lives, even though they may not necessarily agree with the method. I tell people all the time, far more than lives taken are lives saved by Border Patrol. Far more. These
Absolutely.
people are rescuing constantly, and they are providing shelter. So, one of the things that I guess I can go ahead and share that wouldn't be too bad, but it would, I guess, enlighten a few people. Would be that 99% of what you see on television, and I'm including every network. So that's every network. I mean, that's Fox,
Mm-hmm.
that's MSNBC. I don't care what it is. I would say 99% of it is exactly what they want you to see, and it's I'm not saying that it's not true. Some of it. What I am trying to say is, especially Fox News seems to be the most balanced. I'm not saying that they're 100%. I'm saying balanced, and they're trying to do a better job. Other networks, I just spoke to somebody who's been doing some interviews today. I spoke to some people that did some interviews yesterday for major news outlets, and they flat out lie. Uh, these images that you're seeing, many of them did not even occur under this administration.
Right.
The facts are being completely purported to show a story that does not exist. There is no story. These detention centers are vacation for many of these children. And out of 1,000 photos taken, they're going to get the one picture, the one that is showing that child who's having a hard time because it's a different country, or maybe they're hungry or something, or they just made it across the border through that desert. And so yeah, they're a little stressed. They're going to use that one photo, but they never use the other photos of the kids playing foosball, the living room that they're, in, their couches, their Xboxes and PlayStations.
Right.
These are detention centers. These are holding facilities for
Right.
children. Um, they never. I mean, it's rare. It's rare when they show it, or if they do, it's like one, like one small clip, and then the rest of the segment is just negative, 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 and in your mind, you just keep on thinking, man, that's a horrible thing. And I tell people again, stop watching the news so much and go visit your local border patrol facility if you can. Speak to somebody who serves in the border patrol. I mean, you probably know people in your church or in your community. Go up to them and ask them, hey, you know what, tell me about your job. And I think when people do that, they start to realize how unfair and how disgusting they are being treated by the mainstream media and by these news outlets that are trying to show things that are quite normal and that they're actually quite humane. For example, the cages. I had a family member of mine say, "Do you support people that or babies in cages?" And I got to see this comment that that was made towards a family member of mine as well, from one family member to another. And I looked at it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, you know, really? Then why are they using cages? Well, number one, they don't use cages. It's called hurricane fence or chain link fence. Number two, they have to use these types of barriers because if it's a solid wall, they won't be able to see the activity. And contrary to again what a lot of the mainstream media reports, many of the actors that are picked up in these scenarios are not good people. They will do the most vile, the most horrific, and the most brutal crimes to the people that you love. And you've never seen a child cry helplessly and you not be able to do something about it, kind of like what you were talking about, that feeling of hopelessness. And it's those agents in green that actually step up and stop the crime and give those children an opportunity. And they have people on staff that take care of them and feed them and make sure that they're well taken care of. That's the reality, Smooch. Now, is it a perfect process? No. Is it something desirable? Well, no. But I'll tell you what, the conditions that those detention centers are in, and the conditions that are present at the border patrol stations have got to be some of the most humane and far better living conditions than what they came from and what they just went through. And it's our people, our American law enforcement that's going above and beyond and making sure. And it becomes a very big issue, once we even start talking about like vetting, for example. I know that was one of the questions that many audience members have, Jason, but these are unaccompanied minors. Well, number one, that's the great majority. Say out of 12,000, 10,000 of those are unaccompanied, meaning their parents sent them on their own.
It's
Okay.
crazy. I mean,
They
how
sent
far
them
is it
on their
from? Because we see the
own.
in McAllen, they love to show McAllen's detention intake center. Maybe is a better the
Right.
intake center with the
Right.
cages and the mylar blankets and whatnot. And we all know
Right.
it's a very temporary place. But how far is the trip from a city in Mexico to McAllen? Basically, I always hear it's dangerous, but I'm not sure
Right.
exactly. Give me a little enlightenment there on just how far these people are going and how much danger are they putting their children in to make this trip.
Well, one of the things that I tell people all the time, Smooch, is you have to have knowledge. That's very important to understand that, and you have to have experience, and then that will guide, I guess, the type of result. Knowledge. I guess knowledge right now would be, well, it could be anywhere from maybe a couple of 100 miles to even longer if they're using what they call a bestia, which is a huge train where they all hop on, and that's a very common thing. Now, how dangerous it is, well, it all depends, I guess, which city they're coming from or which little pueblito, that little area. But when we talk about danger, I'll give you a statistic right now. And people that are on their phones or on their computers can look this up in a small screen or something. And a study was done in about 2014ish, that showed that 80+% of reported, not unreported, but reported sexual assault, and we're talking sexual assault on minors, on babies, on women, on boys and on everyone. This is sexual assault across the board, but specifically the statistic was for female.
Right.
And we were looking at 80 plus percent. Now, if I told you right now,
Of
if I
those
had a
that made
quarter,
the trip,
yes, sir,
80% are being sexually assaulted.
80%. Now,
4 out of 5.
now I tell people if I had a quarter and we wanted to, do some twisted game and say, okay, well, flip the quarter, heads or tails, whatever you choose. If it's wrong, you have a chance of being sexually assaulted. Everybody would look at me and say, you're crazy. You're a nut.
Right.
That's not a game. Well, it's not a game, is it? And that's a 50-50. Now, what if I told
50-50.
you 80? And those are the reported statistics. We all know
Right.
that upwards of 70 to 75% of all sexual assaults never get reported. So the reality is you're looking in probably high 80s to low 90,
Right.
percentage of people that are being sexually assaulted. And it's so common that when the study was published, people were confused. They said, "Oh, JC probably got that from Fox News or something," and I told them, "No, I actually got that from Fusion." And they're like, "What?" I said, "That's a study that was done by Fusion." And Smooch, do you know who runs Fusion? Jorge Ramos.
Oh, goodness. Oh, Jorge, President
Jorge
Trump's
Ramos.
favorite reporter.
Absolutely. And he's the one who commissioned the study for his own little Fusion television program, thinking that the
Wow.
number would have come out far less, thinking, oh, it's just probably some myth. Well, let me tell you right now, people, when you send a little girl or a little boy across that border, you are knowingly sending them into the hands of cartels and human traffickers with no guarantee that they come. So to vote for illegal immigration, you are literally voting for your child to go through the worst experiences that they can
Right.
ever encounter.
You're,
And
you're voting for trafficking, child trafficking.
yeah. Oh, for
That's
sure.
that's
And yeah, people talk about the drugs though. They go, oh, the drugs, the drug. I said, look, guys, drugs are yes, it's bad, super bad. But I'll tell you right now, people can recover from drugs. People can go to rehab. People can take certain medicines that can get them weaned off of drugs. But a human, now, I'm gonna say something, Smooch, that a lot of people probably don't want to hear because their minds are so good. I mean, everybody that's listening, I would hope they're just good people, and they don't think like evil people do, and they can't comprehend evil. And Chris Kyle, one of the great Texas heroes, made it clear that the savages was the word he used. These people are evil, and they look at humans not as a human, but as a product. And it's a
right.
product that if I get a human, if I sell you a drug, okay, like I said, there's benefits and pros and cons. But a human, I can get people lined up outside a little hut in a dark alley, maybe in Mexico. And I can get you from the time that you're a little girl or a little boy all the way into your elderly years and use your body over and over for all sorts of twisted diabolical things and make it to where that one investment, that one person I kidnapped, making that track is going to make me money for years to come. And that is why the human trafficking aspect of it is rarely talked about. They say human trafficking, and I'm like, what do you think they're being trafficked for? Geniuses.
Right.
What what what
Exactly.
what part of minors and unaccompanied and women, and 80%? I said, I tell people, do you realize that when they cross these borders, their parents, and these are parents, I'm a parent, and people always try to, and I'm sorry if I get emotional now, but people always try to do this whole thing with like, oh, well, you know what, you're that that little girl's a daughter, and you're a parent, you should know better. What the hell kind of parent is going to let their little girl get injected with pregnancy blockers and with birth control, knowing that she's going to go through this? And by
Right.
voting for more illegal immigration, and by voting for people that support open borders or lenient policies, you are advocating for a surge of that to happen. And I know that people's counter is always, well, you don't know what they're going through in their own country. You know what? You're right. I don't. I'm blessed, but I can tell you this right now. Whatever is happening in that country, at least you're together as a family. At least you're able to stick together and work things out. At least you're able to find maybe some local support from a church of some sort. But to then send your child away and to give them birth control, and these are children, and then have them go through that process, hopefully to achieve an American dream. Some people would say, well, that's the beauty of how much they want America, and I can
Right.
appreciate that. I can
Right.
appreciate that. But at the same time, as a parent, you don't get to lecture me or virtue signal now about crying children, because again, out of 12,000, 10,000 of them are unaccompanied, and
Right.
that their parents chose that for them from the beginning. They know that if they get caught, they are going to be sent back, and you may not have a chance of seeing your child. Um, there's a lot of heart in that, man. I mean, I'm not here to insult parents that feel a certain way, because again, I can only imagine, but I would never ever send my 5-year-old little girl out knowing,
Right.
oh, of what's going to happen. That's just not going to happen.
Right. I was trying to, rationalize in my mind that maybe they just aren't aware of just how dangerous it is, and you let me know that they're actually giving their children pregnancy blockers to
Yes.
get through this. So they are
Yeah.
aware. And
Oh,
for
no, no,
some
no. They're
reason they're
110% aware. And here's what's worse. Under this presidency, the price of human smuggling has actually gone up, because they know that the chances of getting caught are increased now.
right.
So instead of charging maybe 10,000 a head, they'll charge 15,000. Well, how the heck, if you're so poor and broke in Mexico, do you expect your family to work that off? Well, I'll tell you how, ladies
Exactly.
and gentlemen. It's going to be through cheap labor. Either you're in a sweatshop, and while you're in that sweatshop making cheap products that people are buying instead of things that say made in the USA, and paying a little bit more for genuine work and genuine labor, you're going to be paying those cheap products, and you're going to be enforcing and encouraging more illegal immigration, more human trafficking and slavery. And then from there, if that doesn't work out so well, like I said, remember, they are products. They are useless pieces of human matter to be used for financial gain or power or leverage for these cartels. Then from there, they'll go ahead and trade them off into the sex industry. And then from there, once that goes bad, they'll get them hooked on drugs. And then from there, they either end up ODing, or they end up just killing themselves. And many of them that are rescued by charitable organizations founded by ex Navy SEALs or former military contractors, they end up running away again. That is sad, because
Yeah.
that's how much trauma that they've experienced, that they feel that they could never go back to their families and live a normal life. Even after being rescued, they'd rather go back to it, because that's how torn they've become.
Right. The exact opposite of what the grand plan was initially. To let them get to America and find the American dream. They end up being destroyed as individuals. And like you said, a lot of them, are either discarded. Once you stop having a use, you're done. I wanted to get into a little bit about the Border Patrol too, because when President Trump came around, a lot of us, when he started talking about immigration and the wall, and we were all like, oh, yes, finally, finally someone. And
Hey,
then when, immediately we saw at the border a huge 70% decrease in people trying to cross. It was just amazing. We all loved what was happening. And
right.
then people started realizing the loopholes were there, especially the liberals and the La Raza and the lawyers that are, trying to push people to come. We got your back when you get here and whatnot. Tell me from what you hear from your family and friends in Border Patrol when they have to follow a policy that our president despises, and I think every true American in this room despises, catch and release. Have you ever had that discussion with them about what you go through all this time to capture and hard work, and you put your ass on the line. We know how many
Yeah,
Border Patrol agents are injured and killed at the border doing their job. Tell me a
sure.
little bit about what their sense is, because this should, we need to know this so we can freaking fire up our base to take this stand. You're not unempathetic if you are for legal immigration. But from their standpoint, what do you hear from your friends and family when they find someone, they get them, they know they're a criminal, and they have to release them into this? I mean, talk to me.
This is one of the most touchy subjects, other than probably the one that we just talked about, the human trafficking aspect and the sexualization of these people. That's probably the worst. But and that's because I can't even get into details about who, what, when, where, and why. I mean,
Exactly.
that's how ugly it is. It's
Right.
rude. But this
Right.
is the most annoying. This is one of those that just irks agents to death, because They know after chasing them down, after cuffing them, after process. I mean, guys, processing isn't a slow thing. Um, it's easy to say, and then you process them. Again, when I talk to people, do you know how much work and how much actual science really is taken into processing one person? And do you know that for every person that's being processed, you're taking away agents from guarding the actual border, hence border patrol?
Right.
Um, you leave areas wide open. And I'm not trying to give, I guess, anybody watching this any ideas, but going through that catch and release, that is probably one of the most horrible loopholes you can have. Right now, that's probably one of the ones that's being exploited by Democrats the most. We saw this happen when the president signed his executive order. First, there was cry and outrage over fake news stories and children being ripped apart and XYZ. My first question is like, wow, I didn't realize that entire government agencies like maybe CPS. I've been doing this for quite some time. If your parents break the law, children have consequences that unfortunately kind of trickle down, and that's one. And every time I bring that up, yeah, okay, but whatever, and then they try to move on to say, no, 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 let's go and focus on that. No,
That's a
no,
fact.
let's,
Yeah.
yeah, no, 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 we're gonna focus on this. We're gonna grind it out until we come to a consensus that can we break the law and not suffer consequences for it. And then from there, then we get into catch and release, which is usually a 20-day loophole, which was something that I think started in 1997 under the Florida's Act. And it was one of the cases where after 20 days, you pretty much release them. And it's one of the things where even under basic detention centers, you can hold them. Many of them get court dates issued to them very quickly. They process them, they get their court date. And the illegal alien is extremely intelligent because they have lawyers from Mexico that don't want them. You see, their own country doesn't want them. Smooch. They have lawyers designed to teach them how to fool and how to use all the loopholes of the
Right.
generous laws of this country. And part of your $10,000 or $15,000 is you're gonna have an opportunity to ask questions and get taught how to screw over the American government.
Right.
And we're going to give you a pamphlet. This pamphlet tells you magic words to use that are medical terms. That one of the loopholes is if you get caught and you claim certain medical injuries and you use certain verbiage, they automatically have to take you to a hospital. You get free medical care. You get treated well. And then from there, they're going to have to feed you because that's very important. We actually feed the people that get caught and hydrate them back. Then from there, they're going to use another magical loophole that will have something which is the worst effect of illegal immigration, which is what they call trickle down immigration. And chain migration or trickle down immigration is where I can use certain words and certain verbiage that are taught to them to bring down grandma, grandpa, uncles, cousins, nephews, all
Right.
undocumented, meaning
Right.
we can't really verify if they're family, but just because you said they're family and they
Right.
show up,
Because you
no,
said
I
it's Uncle Raul. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
No. Um, and I tell people all again, how do we even know that these are your family members? The places where they're coming from, they have no socials, no fingerprints on. I mean, the government's not cooperating because they don't want them. They want to relieve Mexico of its own responsibility, or Honduras, or Guatemala, or Venezuela, or wherever they're coming from. Mainly Honduras and Guatemala right now. I mean, you're getting a brutal influx of that, and so then all of our hospitals and medical care get backed up. All of our attorneys are trying to process. Our judges are backlogged years already. We can't even
Right.
get to the one. No, no, no. I mean, like we're backlogged forever.
So the
And then,
strain just isn't on Border Patrol and on the federal government. The
yeah,
strain hits that local community in a big, big
brutal.
way because, like you said, it fills up the hospitals, and then I imagine they go to the schools,
Oh, sure.
and yeah, it's okay. So especially you're seeing that on the border towns, and kind of a little deeper in as they make their way. Are they seeing the same people? Do your border patrol friends and family, are they? Is it to the point like in the cartoon where the wolf and the sheepdog would, always punch their clock? You know what I mean? And then do their fight, and then they would punch out and go home. Are they seeing people coming back over and over again, uh, arresting the same, or do they hit different parts of the border once they've been? Let's say they get busted at McAllen. What are you seeing? Are they coming back? Are they getting a lot of the Because I always hear about it 5, 6, 8 times people have been deported, and it always
Right.
blows my mind.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you this. You're absolutely right. A lot of the times, they already know where to go through and where the weak spots are. It's very orchestrated. It's very well organized, and it's done by the cartels. And again, I tell my friends and family and people that disagree with me, they imagine families like making this trek on their own, unguided. Many times, it's like, oh no, 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 hold on a second. They're paying money that they're going to pay off with drugs, any legal activity, and fake socials and fake documents. And many times, what ends up happening is they end up in situations where they can go right back. If they get caught, they'll tell their family, "I'll be back in a week. I'll be back in 2 weeks." I'll tell you a joke that um, one of the seniors at the border patrol station told me. A lady that was an agent, very proficient, very knowledgeable, said, "Hey guys, she was a little. I'm not going to say green. She wasn't green, but I guess she wasn't as seasoned as some of the other agents. I caught 20 illegals. All the other agents that had been there, 10 years, 15 years left. They said, no, 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 honey, you didn't catch them. They caught you. Um, they want to get caught. They
Right.
don't run. They have open arms saying, please, please catch me here.
Right.
Cuff me up,
Is it mashed
process
potato
me.
Thursday again?
Yes, yes,
I
absolutely.
I
They're gonna get
understand.
cuffed up. They're gonna get processed. They're gonna get their food. They're gonna say their magic words. They're gonna get released in the community with a piece of paper, a little paper with a
Right.
court date saying, "Now, will you show up to that court date?"
Right.
And they're gonna say, "Yes, of
Pinky
course."
swear that you're coming
Yeah,
back.
pinky promise.
Right.
Double pinky promise, no kinkies. No
That's right.
and they're gonna go and they're gonna be released into the community to where we don't know where they're at anymore. Many of them end up crossing through Houston at that point. They go to Chicago, they go to New York, they go everywhere. Many of them are in our own communities locally, and I speak to teachers all the time. And teachers are nothing but heart. Man, they love. I mean, they just love children, so they have a hard time separating
Well,
that love
yeah.
for children. And
Absolutely.
right, right. So,
The children are the ones that are innocent in all this.
of course
And
they are.
that's the way I always tell folks that when it comes to the children, they never asked to be brought into this earth. They never asked to be in the situation they're in. So it's not the children's fault.
Sure.
We have to put the blame right where it freaking lies, and that's on these. Well, for one, the laws that are allowing it, and the parents that are putting their children on these journeys. I
Sure.
understand that the cartels, there's a major influence, and I'm hearing
Oh
stories
yeah.
that they're recruiting children or snatching
Oh,
children
totally.
and using
Totally.
them to get across the border.
Right.
So, uh, it's very perplexing to, as a parent, you and I, to look at how anyone could, put their child in this situation. I understand some of these third world countries, Honduras and whatnot, are really, really bad shape. There's no
Oh, sure.
doubt. But
Oh, yeah, no, it's brutal.
at
It's
the end of the
brutal.
day, we have these border patrol agents, and I've seen dozens and dozens of stories of the heart that comes out of these border patrol agents that see. I saw a figure. I'm trying to remember exactly where it was at. I believe it was, yeah, it was Kirsten Nielsen when she was
Yeah,
giving her speech in front of the White House press briefing, where they showed the facility that you were talking about, where they have their PlayStations and they're spending $35,000 a child
the
on
child,
each one, per
yeah,
year average.
for
And
sure.
she said flat out that 10% of the kids there were separated from their families. Only 10%, because the other
Right.
90% were trafficked.
Yes.
90%
Yeah,
are trafficked. So how
yeah,
can anyone who says they have a love of children sit there and be a proponent of a plan that encourages child trafficking? Because we all know that a percentage of them are coming here. But there's some nefarious people out there, and child trafficking goes a long ways. We know that with Haiti and everything else. How many
sure,
children have disappeared? So we talk heart, we talk empathy. My
sure.
goodness, a lot of people use that and our goodwill against us. But when it
You know,
comes
it's,
down to it, what's the lesser of the two evils? Separating them at the border for a few days, finding out who they're with is actually their mother, father, or a trafficker or whatnot. It's one of those things that's so obvious for me, and I hope somebody watching this today can just get that. When they see those fences, they see that wailing child. They see the Time magazine article with the mother who you mentioned it. She spent $6,000 to a coyote to get here. 6,000.
Sure. Oh, that's cheap actually. She
I
got a
don't
good deal.
I don't have $6,000 handy,
Yeah.
so I don't even know how they come up with that type of money, but
They
it's
don't remember they're gonna have to pay it off here, either through drugs, being a slave to the cartels, or through some sort of prostitution or sex trafficking.
and
That
that's
I mean,
what's being
I'm telling you, son.
propagated by the liberals. That's what's being propagated by these open border and let everyone come in. Push the if you're with a child, you're automatically getting in. All you're doing
Yep.
is playing into the hands of traffickers, child traffickers. It's
And
reprehensible.
it's brutal because you know a lot like a lot of people go, well, you know what, Jason, you know, you should be more empathetic, you should have more heart. I said I do, but you know what, if I'm gonna start trying to justify the activities of criminals, then at least I don't have to put up with illegal alien criminal activity. I have a choice there. I don't have a choice with my own citizens of this country. We should put them through the judiciary process and take them out and follow the law. But I tell people all the time, look, man, if we're going to start having empathy, we need to start with our own people first. We need to
Absolutely.
take a look at the children in poverty in this own country that are born under maybe drug addicted parents that have a difficult time getting adopted. Many of them are homeless or that are not being fed properly. Why don't we get those funds that we're spending on illegal immigration and put it to those children that are unfortunate here? And that's where my empathy comes from, Smooch. That's where it's at. A lot of people go, well, you need to look at the situation with heart. And I said, no, 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 my heart is in the situation. I know the reality. I know what that kid's going to go through. I don't want them to go through it. Please stay with your family. Make the best life you can. If you're going to try to come across, we allow 1 million illegal immigrants to come to this country every year.
Every
The U.S. is
year.
up every year,
No
and
other
it's like,
country does that.
no, no, no. We've taken more immigrants than any other country, than any other country in the world,
That's right.
and like with the most benefits. And so I try to make it to where I remind people, this is another one of those like pen and pad moments I tell people all the time. Articles, 123, 125, and 126 of the Mexico Constitution. You can be fined, removed, or imprisoned for faking a signature, for faking any sort of documentation, and you can get even up to 10 years in prison with no due process. That judge will just throw you right in. You're not going to get judged by a panel of your peers. You're not going to get this beautiful lawyer. You're going to get sentenced, and that's Mexico's law. And then we wonder why people like myself or my father or just people that support sensible immigration get upset. And what bugs me even more, Smooch, was when I try to explain this. Look, if a stranger knocks at your front door, are you going to let them in just automatically? And they look at me and they go, no, Jason, I'm not an idiot. Are you going to ask them for some ID? Maybe if they're representing an, oh yeah. I said, then why don't you just want that for the country? Why don't you
Right.
just let them go in your home and take your food and pay for their school? And I tell people all the time that virtue signal, you don't get to do that until I see your house personally with your funds and finances taking care of illegal immigrants with no background checks. I don't want you to try to background check them.
Right.
No, let them
Right.
in. And of course, see what happens. Of course, then they look at me like, well, but the children. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're just spinning wheels now. I mean,
Right, right. The bottom line is any good parent normally isn't going to allow their children to be placed in any kind of danger. And if you allow strangers in your home without being vetted, you're putting your children in danger. Bottom
for sure.
line, period. There's no doubt
What did
about
you
it.
just see this whole like airline thing right now? I mean, we got American Airlines and we got, I think, Delta or a few other like United that are virtue signaling saying, please, government, don't use our airlines to be transporting or taking back illegal aliens to their country. Use another airline. And I'm thinking to myself, number one, you got a contract with the government. You don't have much of a choice on that. Nice virtue signal though. It looked really nice for all
American
these.
Airlines.
Yeah. And then, oh yeah. And then you got, I tell people again, you better be, come at me with some facts, man, because Article 132 in the Mexican Constitution of the law of how to govern a population, if an airline in Mexico is being used to traffic illegal foreigners, they can be shut down immediately because they are now aiding and abetting illegal activity in their country. It sounds so normal, right? But yet,
Right.
for our country, if we were to say, I'm going to shut down American Airlines and United because you are, purposely transporting illegal aliens and you're using it and you know they're illegal and you're not doing anything about it, they would look at me again and say, "Dude, I mean, you are just way out of line." And the first thing I respond is, "I'm just taking a cue from my neighbor. That's Mexico, baby. I'm taking a cue from them. Any immigration reforms that I talk about is being implemented by either Mexico or Japan. And Japan's got far less crime, far less problems, kept a sense of their sovereignty. They are wealthy. They're doing beautiful. And I happen to be Japanese, of course, so maybe I have a little bias in
Fair enough. Fair enough. So tell me, in your area, what's the greatest? We already discussed basically that illegal immigration's a big strain on the local communities right there on the border, just because they get released after 20 days, they have to go somewhere, and there's a lot of the state and the city's budgets that are going towards housing, feeding, food stamps, and everything else. What are you seeing the greatest detriment in your local area over the decline of the last, several years? I know we had a nice little spell there after Trump was elected, but what are
there.
you seeing? What's the greatest detriment that you're seeing with this unfettered illegal immigration coming into the country? And how do you think not just your area but the country as a whole? Because you've said you've seen numbers that you can't even tell on the air because it would
Yeah.
blow people's minds. So
Mhm.
tell me your own personal opinion, how it's affecting your local community and how you think it's affecting our nation as a whole.
Well, I can tell you right now that in my opinion, and I'm sure everybody's got one, but in my opinion, one of the things that I think has been the most obvious is again the lack of total respect and the change of culture. They're not calling themselves Americans. They don't call themselves even Texans, which is to us the greatest title. You
Right, right.
know,
A
you know.
Texan's like a vegan. You find out within about 2 seconds whether or not somebody's a vegan or whether someone's a Texan.
A
That's
Texan, it's
that's a
true.
good thing.
It is.
Texans are
It's a
very
very good.
proud.
Totally. And they're not calling themselves Americans or Texans. They're still waving Mexican flags. They're still being very defiant. They're being demanding. They have a sense of entitlement. They have a sense of I belong here versus thank you for letting me be here. What can I do to assimilate? Smooch growing up, whenever I would go visit Mexico, I haven't visited Mexico since I was in high school. But one of the things that people would do is you would know at least some of the basic words to get around. You knew that you could not navigate Mexico without a basic sense of Spanish. And my parents always told me wherever you go and wherever the country you're in, you speak their language and you show
Right.
them respect. And one of the things that we see here in the Rio Grande Valley is people will go to a shopping mall or a restaurant, and the first thing you're going to get is if you speak to them in English, they're going to speak to you in Spanish always. I mean, it's a given. And then afterwards, if you try to speak English, sometimes, and now this isn't all the time, so I don't want to be here to exaggerate, but you'll have some people that are so arrogant, they'll look at you and in Spanish they'll say, "Well, don't you speak Spanish? Pues no hablas español?" And they give you this look that I'm giving you. You know, "No hablas español? Pues, ¿qué
Right.
onda? Pues, ¿qué te pasa? What's wrong with you? How come you don't speak Spanish?" And I think to myself, damn, when I was growing up and I'd go to Mexico, I never went to anybody or any restaurant or any store and said, "Oh, you don't speak English? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Speak English." Because I speak English and therefore I'm demanding I'm in your country in Mexico, so you should speak English. It's super rude and it's super wrong. And I tell people, whenever I speak to anyone, I do my best to speak the language. When I lived in Guatemala for 2 years, doing some missionary service there again for the church, and I've been to Mexico several times. And when I speak Spanish, I mean, I don't try to be rude. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts is the shift in culture. It is a cultural shift. It's a shift that has been promoted, unfortunately, by all of our celebrities. They are promoting this type of, again, F the police attitude. Screw you guys. I'm going to do whatever I want. I belong here. I demand that I'm here, and you have to deal with it.
Well, whose
And I
laws do they follow then? Because obviously
none.
they're not following Mexican laws. Mexican immigration law is
Oh God,
extremely
no.
harsh. And then
Sure.
you come over here and, I've noticed the same thing. We were talking assimilation earlier. So they're
Right.
not trying to assimilate, but what are they trying to do? Just form their own little countries, form their own little sections of Mexico in the United States? I mean,
Right.
what's the aversion to the assimilation and becoming
Um,
American anymore?
no, they don't want to be American. They like American dollars. And They like the financial benefit and all of the benefits of the American dream that we've acquired through being American, not Mexican. Again, cracking that joke. I don't see anybody jumping the fence the other way, guys. I mean,
Right.
it's that simple. And again, these are some harsh, realities and some brutal facts. But they come here, and I'm talking about, not the good group. There are people that come here that want to be American, that work
Absolutely.
hard, that are just trying. I mean, even some of the illegal aliens, you can see some genuine hurt and some genuine love. Like, dude, I love America, and I just can't wait 2 more years. Some of them have that attitude, and I can empathize a little bit. I live here. I love my people. I love the idea that they're trying to do better. But I would really appreciate it if they do it the way everyone else is doing it, which is properly. You wait in line. You learn the language. You take the tests. You pass the exams. You suffer a little bit more, unfortunately, the way everyone else is in line before you. And then you end up becoming a legal American citizen where you can go to your citizen ceremony, wave a flag, put on a flag shirt. You don't see that anymore, Smooch. Everybody's still waving Mexican flags. Everybody has flags painted on their vehicles. Everybody's wearing Mexico shirts. Whenever I wear a red, white, and blue shirt in certain areas, I'm telling you, people will actually go like, "Hey, dude, like, where's your Mexican pride?" Like, BS, bro. I wasn't born in Mexico. I don't pay Mexican taxes. I don't work for Mexican pesos.
Right.
All about the dollar, son. It's all about the red, white, and blue. And welcome to Texas.
Well, it
So,
makes you want to ask them, "Where's your Mexican pride? Why aren't you in Mexico?" You
oh,
know,
oh,
I mean,
yeah. Then
that's
afterwards, you better put them up there, Smooch.
right. Well, fair enough. My mouth has put me there a few times, no doubt. But it's almost the obvious questions,
Oh,
that
for
you
sure.
want to ask. And it seems to me the lack of assimilation, it doesn't give us any hope in the future of having anything but problems with that. We as Americans are very welcoming. And if
Sure.
people, even illegals that are here now, that say, "Hey, I was brought here." I have a friend who was brought here when he was 2.5 years old. He
Right.
is, in my mind, as American or you or I. His
Right.
English is better than mine. And he was in a situation where he was brought without he didn't have any choice in it. But I've
Mm,
watched him bust his ass since President Trump became president because he's seen that the opportunity, especially when President Trump came out and said, "Okay, you guys want DACA fix instead of 800,000, we're going to
I
do
know.
1.7 million or 2 million or
I know.
whatnot." And
I'll raise you a
he's
million.
on the right path now, and it does
Yeah.
me good because
Right.
it's one of those areas where, of course, I'm empathetic. Of course, I know that he can't make a life in Mexico. He's never been to Mexico. He doesn't
Sure.
speak very good Spanish. You know what I
Right.
mean? So there is those cases there. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're either a country of laws, a country of borders, or we're not. So I
Right.
don't get the Mexican pride thing. Do they expect Mexico not to have borders? Do they expect other countries not to have borders? The only way that you can define your area is with a border. And if you're
Right.
being invaded by another country, and that's basically what you look at when you have millions of people pouring through illegally, when on top of it, you're already letting a million in legally every single year,
Right.
then it comes a point where your country's not your country anymore.
Oh,
And
no, no, totally.
you guys see
Totally.
that
And,
because you did it
yeah.
right. I mean, it's got to be a
Yeah.
slap in your face to know that your dad and your grandmother and other people in your families busted their ass to become an American citizen and then instilled that. What a great country, what opportunity you have. If you bust your ass, you have that equal opportunity. I'm pretty sure that with all this immigration stuff going on, you guys have had some pretty lively conversations around the old family dinner table lately, right?
Uh, yeah, man. Lively is putting it lightly. Uh, if it's just immediate family, maybe a particular member of our family might try to come up with some sort. But again, I tell all of my family and friends, number one, there's nothing political that should ever divide a family. I love my family to death, and I disagree with some of their ideals, because, quite frankly, they're exactly that. They're not even values. Many times, they're definitely ideals of what could be and what should be, and versus what is and what is reality. And the moment that I started dropping these truth bombs, and like I kind of teased earlier, these brass knuckle punches that hurt a little, but they're truthful and they sting and they need to be looked at more. A lot of the times it's going to go back to some emotional thing. Well, I feel that the world should do this, or I was born with this type of privilege, and then therefore everybody should have that. And why is it that I was born here and they were? I look, man. Now you're getting into hokey pokey universe stuff that none of us can control. Let's go and control our immediate family. I love the quote by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, Pearson, who's just done really great things. And
Absolutely.
he has said, first get your house in order, sort yourself out. Let's go and take care of our home, the United States of America first. Let's sort ourselves out. Let's get ourselves in perfect order to where we have no poverty among us that can't be well addressed. All of our citizens are taken care of. All of our military veterans, like my family, and all of my friends and all of our citizens across this country should be handled well. We should be providing them with the best health care that I think our president has been doing. Their children, as of right now, and I think in the future, should continue to receive their GI scholarships and their benefits. We really need to take a look at ourselves, solidify it, allocate the resources, cut out the waste, and really understand immigration for what it is. Not everybody can fit in one little country. Many
That's
people
right.
don't want to fit in this country, and that's almost an American arrogance that some of my friends have. Well, the whole world wants to be American. Actually, no, no. Many people are very happy being where they're at. They just need to be given a better opportunity with their government and with maybe some American assistance in their own country
Right.
to have a better form of life, not necessarily immigrate to the United States.
Well, you talk about Americans' lives and the American dreamers and whatnot, and when you hear numbers like $35,000 is being spent per child per year at these centers, well, then you
Mm,
have to look at how many American children are not being afforded, not even close to that amount of money in their rearing over. You're talking 13 million kids underneath the poverty level. 13 million
sure.
American kids. And we all know when you have poverty, you have more crime. And then
Right.
these kids' parents are being arrested. And then guess what? They're being separated. And it's not the
Right.
kids being put in cages, it's the parents being put in cages. And
Yeah.
we don't hear any uproar about
Yeah.
we are, I mean, my God, the liberal agenda is, it's almost laughable. The
Yeah.
Rachel Maddow fake crying with no
Yeah, that
tears,
was
the
great.
Elijah Cummings, John
Um,
Lewis,
sure.
freaking, it's almost laughable. We all know when crying Chucky goes to crying that
Oh my
it's
gosh.
it's
Yeah,
nothing
I know.
about future votes and whatnot. So I really really appreciate you coming on tonight and giving us a little sense. I hope this leads to other interviews, maybe MNN, a night with you and that's a hint, Glenn. A night with
I love
you and Jason. My final question, and it took me a while to come up with this one because I wanted to hit you hard, something really good.
There you go.
Go
I'm
Barbara
ready.
Walters on you with a tear. No, I'm kidding.
Ooh.
Okay, so a couple years ago, you were tweeted by President Trump. A
Yes, sir.
picture of you, uh, and basically, I guess I would imagine you were talking about immigration, perhaps,
Yeah.
in that. And that was when he was in McAllen, or did he just pull up uh, the article? Why don't you explain that? How did you get tweeted by President Trump? And then I'll ask you the question.
So here's what's interesting. We were actually at a local GOP event. CNN had gone there, and I was with Miriam Cepeda, and she and I really started a really big MAGA representation down in South Texas, and we were the ones that were putting up all the signs. We were the ones that were, people would take them down, we put them back up. We were the only people out there, maybe with maybe one or two more individuals, but we were definitely dominant in that area, and we gave a MAGA representation quite well. She had notified me that CNN Politics was going to be showing up at a local GOP event, and it was live, and I was there, and people were getting an opportunity to say their piece, and I said, you know what, I got something to say about some immigration,
Nice.
and to me, that's peanut butter and jelly, bro. I mean, it's
Right.
smooth. I love it. It's good stuff. So I ended up doing that, and it was airing live on CNN Politics television, and they just kept on, and I kept on going, and I was talking about very similar issues. I said, you know what, we're not against immigration, and I hate it when the media does that. They love to say immigrant. I'm like, no, stop.
Right.
Illegal. There's a difference. Legal,
It's,
illegal.
it's huge
And
difference.
we were hammering on about that, and later from that interview, when CNN Politics stopped doing that, President Trump was apparently, or his team, I guess, was taking a look at the time. He wasn't the president at the time; he was still candidate
Right.
Trump, and they got that shot of me, and they used it on the official Donald J. Trump Twitter. I couldn't believe it. It was actually Miriam who texted me, and she said, "Hey, I think take a look at this." I forgot who texted me first, but I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" I mean, this is the
Wow.
this is a candidate that's going for president, and he's got like tons of millions of followers, and it's Jason Solis from Mission, Texas, on his Twitter, and I screenshot it and I sent it to my uncle. I sent it to my parents and my
Wow.
family,
That's a
and
proud moment right
oh,
there.
dude,
I
oh
mean,
my gosh,
that's
yeah,
huge. That's absolutely huge.
yeah,
The liberals like to play word games, and you just mentioned it, but the whole illegal immigrant versus immigrant,
right.
for me it always comes down to, if we're gonna play word games, then a drug dealer is an undocumented pharmacist, and their way of thinking, that's exactly the way it is, and we know that's not the way it is. But the
No,
final question that I have for
yeah,
you tonight
go
is:
ahead.
President Trump comes back to Mission, comes back to McAllen, Texas, and talks to Jason Solis and says, "You've been here your whole life. This is your peanut butter and jelly. This is your issue.
Yeah.
What can I do? What needs to be done, Jason? How are we going to fix this and make our country great again?" Go.
Build the wall.
Boom. That's simple.
Done.
I like it. I like it. That's perfect. Great answer. I think we all know that's why they're fighting so hard. They're fighting so hard against our president
Oh,
in
totally.
this wall, because we know that takes and turns off the spigot. And when we turn off the spigot, we can fill the little leaks here and there.
Oh,
But
for sure.
you can't have the
The,
spigot running.
no, the wall is about technology. It's about physical barriers. It's about proper anti-tunneling systems and drone technology and enough border. I mean, that's really what it means. And a lot of people say, well, it's just a barrier. No, no, no. This is a very technologically advanced, controlled, patrolled
Right.
barrier. And so, yes, I mean, in three simple words, if President Trump were to ask me, Jason, or a genie or anybody, hey man, make a wish when it comes to immigration, it would definitely be build a wall, get it done, make it happen, and you will see dramatic improvement for American life, and quite frankly, the lives of those that don't have to make that journey anymore. They can, we can start helping them in their own countries and provide generous aid and provide empathy and counseling to those that are still suffering through some sort of type of trauma. Well, the
Right.
United States can be a huge help. And of course, numbers and data have shown that when we do that, they have far greater lives and far greater benefits, not just to themselves, but to the communities that they'd be living in. I would definitely do that. And, Smooch, I wanted to take a second, if you don't mind it, and possibly talk about how we can get involved in South Texas, if that's okay with you, sir.
Absolutely. Please do.
One of the things that I'm doing, guys, is I'm hosting the first ever, Make America Great Again South Texas party. And it's myself and my father, and we are going to be sponsoring one of the greatest, I think, MAGA events in South Texas. And everybody that's watching, you just got your invite, and you are invited to go. It's on Eventbrite. You can go on the website eventbrite.com, and you can, in the search, look up, South Texas MAGA party, and that's South Texas, all of it spelled out, MAGA, MAGA party. And it's hosted by myself, Jason Solis, and I would love to see you guys there. We're going to be having a lot of people come down. We've got confirmed tickets coming in from everywhere. We have a huge presentation happening. We got a DJ with all the thumping music. That's booked and confirmed. The venue is gorgeous. It's got a nice little pond with some beautiful pictures. For pictures, we're going to be having a delicious catering provided. I've got top raffle prizes, Smooch, from IvankaTrump.com. I've got beautiful jewelry
Ooh.
sets from Swarovski that we're going to be raffling. I've got autographed, personalized memorabilia and, I guess, collector's items from various, certain things. I don't want to give away all of the goods.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I've got a huge, no, no, I'm sorry, huge MAGA cake that's custom. I've been speaking to a friend of mine. She's a professional baker, and she's making a huge, monstrous MAGA cake that's going to have, beautiful crystals and fire coming out. I mean, it's going to be something special. and we've got a lot going on. And I would love everybody to be there. I know that Mr. Gingrich from MAGA Coalition. I've spoken to different people. I've spoken to Bianca. I've spoken to Priscilla at our local GOP, and Miriam and Chelsea, and I'm speaking to Adrian, who's our chairwoman for the GOP right now. I'm speaking to everybody, and I've reached out and I've said, look, we want to show that South Texas doesn't have to stay blue. We are MAGA. We are there to show that everybody's invited to celebrate the success of the president. We're not saying he's 100% perfect. Nobody is, but hot dang if he's doing a good job. I mean, and we're just proud of it, man.
Right. Absolutely. So how can people get a hold of you on Twitter or social media?
Yeah. So if people want to go and get a hold of me, you can take a look at my Twitter handle. It's at RGVTexan. And you can go ahead and take a look at that and make sure that it's there, and you'll see it's got a nice Texas flag on there, and at RGV Texan, and you can take a look. I am super happy to be able to be on the show and to be able to hopefully give some information, some personal stories, some really good facts, and I encourage people to look over those article numbers again in the general law of population for Mexico. And Smooch, you've been a phenomenal host. I appreciate you very much. I know that this is your show, and I appreciate the phone call and taking the time out of your evening, away from your family to host me.
Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on. This has been in the works for a little while. September 15th in Mission,
Right.
Texas is
right.
the MAGA event, y'all.
Yep.
So any of y'all Texan fam, and there's a lot of them, you're close.
Right.
The rest of the fam, come meet Jason. Come meet his dad, Sergio, who I had a pleasure to meet with him as well. You're talking good quality people that have been there, done that, and got lots of stories to tell. I mean, I could probably do a 7-hour show with you just telling me all the craziness that's gone on living 8 miles from the border. But we'll save all that for other nights, because I got a feeling that during this hot button issue that this is going to be integral. Between now and November, more people need to hear about the truth that's going on down there, and not some emotional reaction to what you're seeing on mainstream media, because we all know that's just designed to gaslight people. All they're trying to do is hit you in your feelers the way and get you to react the way they want to. So
For sure.
very enlightening for me. I certainly appreciate you showing up tonight and enlightening the fam and enlightening myself. Normally I would end the show with some music, but due to certain copyright things that could happen, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sign off and say I appreciate you, fam. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight and enjoying this interview. Please share it. Please put it all over your social media. I seen a comment earlier where someone said this interview needs to be all over the place, and you're right, but this is the only way we're going to do this. That's why I even decided to do any shows at all, is to bring knowledge to people that we're not getting. Mainstream media keeps us like mushrooms. They feed us shit and they keep us in the dark, and we don't want that. And so we have to bring great patriots like Jason Solis and his family aboard. So thank you everybody for coming on and enjoying the show. Please share it out, and if you don't follow RVG Texan, that's at RVG Texan, then go to Twitter right now and get her done. Thanks, guys. Baby. I certainly appreciate everybody coming in for Pandemonium tonight. And I love you, fam. Remember, MAGA till it hurts.
That's right, baby.
Our descendants are totally counting on us. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming in and watching this special replay of Pandemonium, the immigration special. I did screw up Jason's Twitter handle all freaking night, so this is my opportunity to fix that. It is RGV Rio Grande Valley, RGV Texan 956. You guys can follow him. He's a great patriot. He's fantastic, and I actually do have a little bit of music to get you guys out with. Appreciate you coming out. Share this out, and hopefully we'll bring some knowledge to some issues and side of things that we just don't see. My next guest on Pandemonium could very well be an epic one. Not that Jason wasn't, because he certainly is. I loved that interview. But I'm pushing real hard. I'm not going to say any names because I do not want to jinx it. Meanwhile, tomorrow night on maganews.net, Monday is Smooch Panda Nights, where I get to co-host with the great Glenn, New York City Guns. So you guys make sure you catch that tomorrow at 7 Eastern. Appreciate you, fam. Coming up here in about 14 minutes on maganews.net is Pillow Talk with Colonel Jim Pillow. If you have not caught Pillow Talk, you gotta check this one out. Colonel Pillow is a fantastic patriot, no doubt about it, and his stories are epic from a lifelong military mind who was there, who was in intelligence, who'd seen a lot and knows a lot. So you guys check that out. Love you, fam. Appreciate you coming out tonight, and enjoy the outro. Thanks to Glenn.